Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that this is a true story. Not a single detail has been fabricated. During my first year of middle school, I developed a bit of a reputation as a wild child, and I've had several run-ins with our school's resource officer. One day when I was at home watching TV in the living room with my sister, someone rang the doorbell. This startled my younger sister because our parents weren't home. I was the oldest of 4 children, and despite my rebellious nature, I was still the big sister. I wasn't too worried about someone at our door because I figured it was probably the mailman or one of those annoying solicitors, or perhaps it was our neighbor checking in on us. I went to the door and politely asked, "Who is it?"
"Open up. It's the police."
A man's voice responded. By the way, our door had no peephole. That's a whole other story. But I could tell there was something off about this man's voice. It seemed cold and detached. I turned to my sister. "I don't know if this guy's really a cop. Go upstairs and go check on Jason and Ashley. I'll handle this." She darted up the stairs. The guy on the other side of the door began asking for somebody by name, claiming that they lived there. "I think you got the wrong place. No one by that name lives here."
"Well, I have a warrant that says otherwise. Are you lying to me, young lady?"
"No, the guy that you're looking for doesn't live here."
"Then who just ran up the stairs?"
This immediately creeped me out. There was a long window by the front door. It had one of those thick frost layerings. It wasn't easy to tell who was inside if you were on the outside looking through it. But it didn't look like he was standing in front of the window. So when did he take a look? He would have had to focus real hard to see my sister because there were no lights on. Furthermore, it was midday, so it should have looked completely dark from where he was. I automatically felt threatened. Whoever this man was had crossed into creep territory. So now I was going to be a jerk. "It was my sister, and she's obviously not the grown man that you're looking for."
"Why did she run?"
"Because you're a fucking weirdo."
"Excuse me, you don't talk to a police officer like that."
The way he said that sounded like he was becoming annoyed, like I should just trust him on his word alone. "Well, if you are a cop, you're not a very good one, because you're at the wrong address. And how do I even know that you are a cop?"
"You should just open the door and see for yourself."
That's when I saw my sister peeking around the corner at the top of the steps. "Get back," I whispered. We rarely get people at our door when my parents aren't home, but it's not impossible. I had this habit of locking the screen door. It was very strong for a screen door as well. And to clarify, it was one of those screen doors directly outside of the front door. Our front porch was open. I figured I would take the risk and open the door, just to see if this man was really a cop. When I opened up, the man on the porch did look like a cop. His hand was on his gun, and he kept looking behind me as if he was searching for something. His behavior made me trust him even less. He began grilling me about my sister, trying to catch me in a lie. "Okay, so who really ran up those stairs?" "It was my sister. I already told you. How do I know it's your sister and not the person I'm looking for?" "Look, you have the wrong address." The man glared at me through his aviators. It was hard to see his face because of how big they were. It was like he was trying to hide his face. I know it's a silly thought for a kid, but my mom and I watched tons of true crime shows together. I know it was stupid to open the door, but I had this sinking feeling that he knew that we were alone. Up to this point, he did not ask for my parents, not even once. I just wanted to keep him in sight because I knew my parents would be home soon. The cop explained to me that the man he was looking for lived at our house, and according to his paperwork, this was still his current address. I informed the cop that we had been living here for a few years now. and I knew for a fact the woman before us lived here alone. This frustrated him, and he informed me in a demanding tone that he was going to check the house himself. No you're not. Young lady, you're interfering with police business. Now open up the door before you get in trouble. I'm not stupid. I know that you need special court papers to come inside. I was in a stubborn mood, and nobody wins against me when I'm in a stubborn mood. Unless, of course, you're my parents. Cop or not, this man wasn't coming inside the house, or going anywhere near my siblings. That's when he demanded to speak to my parents for the first time. Where are your parents? I want to speak to them about your behavior. He was trying to use the get me into trouble tactic to frighten me. In reality, my mom was far scarier than him. He would have been afraid of my mom because she's the type to kick someone's ass and then ask questions later. But she doesn't play around when it comes to her kids. She wouldn't assault or threaten a police officer, but he would have been in for it because my mom would have unleashed a verbal onslaught. Full-blown Karen mode. Level 10. My parents aren't here right now. They're at the grocery store. I had a feeling that he already knew my parents weren't home. Up until then, he hadn't asked for them. I didn't know if he was a cop or not, but I didn't want to aggravate him further by telling him a lie. I know that my behavior was annoying, but I wasn't going to give him a reason to call me a liar. That's when he reached for the screen door and tried to open it. That's when he discovered it was locked. Open the damn door! I said no. I then slammed the door shut so he couldn't ask me again. I snuck halfway up the stairs and listened. He began yanking and tugging on the screen door.
Little bitch, I should arrest you and teach you a lesson.
After that, he just walked through our neighbor's yard like nothing happened. That's when I realized that I never saw any cop cars in our driveway. We lived in townhomes, so I could see all the vehicles from a distance, and I didn't spot a single cruiser parked nearby. My parents showed up almost right after he left. I told my mom what happened. Well, you shouldn't have opened the door, and you should have called me right away. What's the matter with you? You're grounded. Now come help me with the groceries. I couldn't help but notice that our neighbors checked on us far more often after this incident, and our parents got us a babysitter whenever they left the house without us. I'm not 100% sure, but something tells me that that man who came to the house wasn't a cop, and I would have put my family in danger by allowing him inside. To everyone listening, teach your kids that a uniform is just not enough. You should ask for their badge number and call the police station to verify if you can. It also doesn't hurt to invest in a strong, sturdy screen door.
This is something that happened back when I was about 10 or 12 years old. I'm an adult now, so it was a long time ago, but I still think about it sometimes. That's how weird and scary this situation actually was. To start out, I will mention that this was sometime in the early 2000s. Cell phones weren't as common back then, but my parents did have them. It was more common though for us to use our home phone, which was connected through our house. I think we had 2 or 3 of them. The main one was in the kitchen, and there was another in the living room. We didn't have any caller ID, so when a phone call came in, you didn't know who it was unless you answered it. I was an only child, so I didn't have any siblings. One night, my parents left to go shopping, and I stayed home because I wasn't interested in going that night. I would go with them about half the time, but most of the time it was really boring. My parents would leave me home by myself all the time for small trips like that, and I was used to it. So that night, probably an hour after my parents left, I was in the kitchen and the phone rang. I figured that it was probably my parents calling, so I picked up the phone and answered it. After I said hello, I expected to hear my mom's voice, but I didn't. It It was a man's voice, which sounded really weird. It definitely wasn't my dad either. The man on the other end spoke very slowly and asked me who I was. I was kind of creeped out a little bit, but I just figured the person was probably calling for one of my parents. Because I was so caught off guard though, I couldn't think of anything to say. I ended up just hanging up the phone right then and there. Afterwards, I went back to whatever I was doing. I don't remember a whole lot the rest of the time that my parents were gone that night. I know that when they came home, that guy didn't call back or anything. But only a few days later, the guy called back again. This time, my parents had already gone to bed, and I was up late watching TV in the living room. It was a Friday night, so I didn't have school and could stay up late. I'm guessing that it was like 11 p.m. or so. When I heard the phone ringing, it was really strange. There was usually never phone calls this late at night. I wondered who it could possibly be, but I had no intentions of answering it. I wasn't the type of person to just answer the phone unless my parents were gone or I was expecting a call. I let it ring as I continued watching TV and sitting on the couch. The living room phone was just a little ways away from me. After the phone stopped ringing, I heard a beep, and then could tell that somebody was going to leave a message. When somebody left a voicemail, you could hear it in live time. When I heard the person start to speak again, I instantly felt sort of creeped out. It was the same man speaking in a deep and slow voice just as he had before. He said something like, "Hi, I thought you were home tonight." There was a little pause before he hung up. I wondered who this guy was. Sure, I didn't know all the people that my parents did, but I was really close with my parents. If they had talked with this guy on the phone before in the past, I feel like I would have known. And why was he calling so late at night? I went to the phone, which now had the flashing light that there was a new message. I played it back just to hear it again. It was certainly really strange. I only stayed up for a little bit longer that night before going to bed. The next day, I forgot to tell my parents about the strange phone call, just as I had the other day as well. But later that night, we were all at home and in the living room when the phone rang. It was kind of late again this time, probably after 8 p.m. or so. My mom walked over and answered the phone. I really didn't think much of it, until my mom hung up the phone a very short time later without really saying anything. She said that when she answered the phone, she heard nothing, and then whoever was on the other end just hung up. My dad said that it was probably a wrong number, but then I remembered the strange phone calls, and I told my parents about them. They said they were unaware of who that could be. We played the message from the previous night, and we all found it very weird. The best guess was that it was somebody who had the wrong number or was just a prankster. That night, we didn't get any other calls. We didn't get any for about a week. In that time, I basically forgot about it. But then one night, I was home by myself again. I think my parents were out shopping again, but I don't remember exactly where they were. It was dark out, and I was in the living room when the phone rang. Thinking that it was my parents, I answered it, but it wasn't. I heard the man's voice again. He started to speak, but I immediately hung up on him. I was too creeped out to listen to whatever he had to say. But just moments later, the phone rang again. I just knew that it was probably him calling back. On the slim chance that it was my parents, they could leave a message. When the phone stopped ringing, I heard that whoever it was going to leave a message. When the message started, I heard the man's voice again. He said that he could see that I was home right now. This was really weird. Could he really? How did he know that I was home? I went over to the window and opened up the curtains a little bit, looking out to the street. I saw that there was a car parked on the side of the street just a little ways back of our house. It was unusual to have any cars parked on the side of our street. I couldn't tell who was inside or anything, but the engine was on and the car was running. I watched it for like 10 or 15 seconds and it didn't move. This was possibly the man. After seeing this, I ran to the phone and called my mom on her cell phone. I told her what was happening, and she said that they would head home immediately. I was too afraid to look out the window again, and I hid behind the couch until my parents got back home. They arrived maybe 10 minutes later, and when they did, they said that the car was not in the street. I'm not sure where that guy went, but I was happy that he was gone. After this happened, my parents didn't leave me home alone for a long time. Everywhere they went, they insisted that I came with. We also unplugged our home phone for probably about a month. When we finally hooked it back up, whoever that guy was didn't call again. I don't know for sure if that was actually him parked on the side of the street, but I have a feeling that it was. I also don't know who that guy was or why he kept calling us. A few years back, I got a new phone with a new number and everything. When I did, I called my best friend and was pretty sure that I knew her number and had it memorized. Calling her was just about the first thing that I did when I got my new phone. Right when I heard her pick up the phone, I said hi, but the person on the other end was a man. I didn't recognize the voice either. I asked if this was my friend's number, and the person said no. I realized I probably had the wrong number, and I told them that. But the guy said something like, "No, who is this calling?" I just said sorry again and then hung up. I looked back to the number that I had dialed and realized that it was in fact wrong. I had mixed up one of the numbers, but everything else was correct. Then I called my friend, but as I was talking to her, I got a call from another number. It was the first guy who I had called accidentally, and he was calling back. I ignored it and talked to my friend for about 10 minutes or so. The guy tried calling 2 more times during the call. Then, later that day, he tried calling me probably 5 more times at least. I ignored all of them, but he just wouldn't stop. He kept calling, so finally I answered it. The man on the other end acted like he hadn't been blowing up my phone all day and night. He casually asked me what was going on and how I was doing. I asked him why he kept calling me, and he flat out ignored the question. I got mad and hung up on him after that. Then I blocked his number. Now I wouldn't have to worry about this guy contacting me again. Or so I thought. Just the next day, I got a text from a new number. It said, "Why did you block me?" I asked who it was, but I really didn't need to. Obviously, I knew who it was. It was the guy that kept calling me. He probably just made an account on one of those free text and call apps or whatever. He texted me back, confirming what I knew, but I just went ahead and blocked this number. This didn't stop him, though. Whoever this guy was, he was very determined. A new number started calling me repeatedly later that day. I couldn't believe that this guy was still trying to contact me. He just wouldn't give up. I texted this number, asking him to stop harassing me, but he didn't. Each time that I would block the number, a new one would appear. He would call me about 10 times a day and just wouldn't leave me alone. This went on for more than an entire week. I decided then that I was just going to get a new number. I had only had my number for about a week, and this guy would not leave me alone. After I was able to change numbers again, I was finally left alone. That guy probably kept calling and texting my old number. If somebody else got it, I feel sorry for them. But when the guy found out it wasn't me, hopefully he left them alone. I still can't believe the efforts he went through to get to me, though. I'm glad it didn't get worse. I live in a fairly small and quiet town. I live by myself, a little bit out in the country. The story I'm about to tell you happened just a few months ago. One night, I was sleeping, but woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember that when I woke up, I heard my phone vibrating on the nightstand next to me. I ignored it and just tried to go back to sleep, but whoever was calling me called again. After probably the 3rd or 4th call, I finally woke up completely. To that point, I had kind of been half awake, just wanting to go back to sleep. I hadn't really realized how strange it was to receive a random phone call at this hour. I looked at the phone and it simply said, "Unknown number" on the screen. This was also kind of odd. Now that I was awake, I could tell whoever it was really wanted me to answer, and I accepted the call. I said, "Hello?" but at first heard nothing on the other end. Then I heard the sound of a heavy and deliberate breathing. That was it. I asked multiple times who was calling, but all I got in response was the breathing noises. This had to be a joke. How else could I explain this? I was pretty sure that was the case. I mean, who calls up someone at 2 o'clock in the morning and just breathes on the other end? They probably found some way to not make their number show and were pulling a prank on me. I said something like, "Very funny," and then I hung up on them. Then I went back to sleep. They actually did not call me for the rest of the night, and I woke up the next morning for work at my normal time. It was about 7 a.m., and after getting up, I went into the kitchen. My kitchen is kind of at the front of the house. That's when I noticed something on my front window. There was like a post-it note, and it was sticking to the window, and I found this really odd. It hadn't been there the night before. It was in obvious view of me, and somebody had to have put it there recently. I walked outside and picked it off the window. There was writing in pen on the sticky note which said, "Call me back." I got the chills when I read it. I connected it to the call that I had gotten at 2 o'clock in the morning. This was really odd. Now, I don't just live in a city where there are tons of houses. Like I said, I'm a little more out in the countryside. The houses are spread very far apart. I can barely even see my neighbor's house when I'm in my driveway. My driveway is also really long. For somebody to be on my property, which has multiple no trespassing signs on it, this was really strange. I went to the police that day about it, just letting them know. I didn't really feel like I was in danger, but I thought I would let them know about the situation because of how strange it was. It's a quiet town, and these things don't happen very often. Now, it very well could have been some guy in the neighborhood pulling a prank, but I've never had any pranks pulled on me like that before. I couldn't really think of anybody who would do something like that to me either. Today, it remains a mystery, and I haven't had any strange phone calls since. This is something that happened a few years ago. I buy things on eBay here and there, and have been doing so for years. I like to collect things like sports memorabilia, and occasionally I bid on auctions. One time, I saw this autographed football that was signed by one of my favorite players. It had 0 bids, and the starting bid was pretty low. I expected it to go way up, but I entered my maximum bid and then moved on, thinking maybe I had a shot at winning it. The auction still had several days left. Over the next few days, I actually forgot all about it. Then, I got a notification that I had won the auction and I could pay for the signed ball now. When I looked, I couldn't believe it. Not one single other person had bid on the ball, and I had won. I don't remember the exact price. I think it was maybe like $10. It was probably worth a lot more, maybe over $50. I was really excited and paid the money. The very next night, though, I was at home when my phone rang. During this time, I had a landline phone that I had for years. I did not recognize the number on the caller ID, so I didn't answer it. What followed shortly after was a message. A man's voice came onto my answering machine, and he said that he was trying to reach me and mentioned my name. He said that I had won his auction for the football, and unfortunately nobody else bid on it. Then he said that I was getting way too good of a deal, and it wasn't fair at all, but he was going to do me a favor and mail it anyways. He went on to say that he expects me to leave him a very good review after this. Now, this rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like how he called me up on my personal phone to say this. I won his auction fair and square. If he didn't want the risk of somebody paying $10 for it, then he shouldn't have started the bidding so low. He knew the risks. I went on eBay and looked at some other listings of the same player's autograph on a football. They were going for a little over $50, so the guy lost out on about $40. It's not that big of a deal. Just 2 days later, I received the football in the mail. It was fast shipping, because I guess the guy lived in the same state as me. After receiving the football, it was packaged well, and just how it looked online. I went on eBay to leave the good review that the seller wanted so badly. To be honest, I really didn't want to leave him a good review after what he did. It kind of annoyed me. But when I logged into eBay, I noticed that he had already left me a negative review. On eBay, sellers and buyers can leave each other reviews. You can leave it positive, negative, or neutral. This affects your feedback, and people are less likely to buy or sell to you if you have a bad rating. Mine had been perfect to that point, and his was pretty good. I think it was like 99% positive. His negative review of me said, "Buyer got way too good of a deal." Clearly, he was upset about it, but I did not feel that it was fair for him to leave me a bad review. What was I supposed to do? I bid and I won. Did he expect me to offer to pay more for no reason? It angered me that he left me a bad review, so I left him a bad review. I said what happened. I said, "I won the auction from this seller for a good deal." He then called my home phone complaining and demanded that I leave him a good review. He sent me a message after this, which I ignored. I didn't even open it. Then, the next day, he called me again. I didn't answer, and he left another message. This one was very angry. He berated me for about 3 minutes straight. I didn't even listen to the whole thing and deleted it. But this didn't stop him. He called me again several times the next day. I got frustrated, and luckily I had call blocker installed on my landline. I blocked his number so that he would finally stop bothering me. For several days, everything was fine. But then, one night, I was at home, and out of nowhere got a knock on my front door. I walked down to the front door, but before opening it, looked outside. It was a man who I did not recognize. I didn't know why he would be here. I answered the door, and the man standing there mentioned my name and asked if that was me. I said yes. He then told me that he sold me a football on eBay not long ago. As soon as I heard that, I slammed the door right in his face. This caused him to start aggressively banging on my door. I yelled at him to go away or I was calling the cops. He was yelling and demanding that I give him the ball back, saying that I scammed him. I couldn't believe this guy. I'm not sure if he was really just mad about the ball at this point, or if he was just mad at me. He kept standing there and knocking on my door every so often. After he didn't leave for over 10 minutes, I called the police on him. When they arrived about 10 minutes after that, the man was still there. They spoke with him, and he gave his side of the story, which I'm not even sure what that was. An officer came inside and spoke to me, and said that the man outside kept claiming that I scammed him and stole his autographed football. I told the officer the whole story, and I showed him eBay proof on my phone. After a while, the police ruled in favor of me. They said that the transaction was fair and I owned the football. They told the man that he had to leave my property and told him not to come back. Eventually, the man agreed and left. After that, I never heard from him again. I still have the football, and every time I look at it, I laugh when I remember the crazy story that goes with it. Several months ago, I sold my PlayStation 5 on eBay. My friend was getting rid of his PS5 for an Xbox, so he sold it to me for a really good price. His PlayStation 5 was a little bit nicer than the version that I had, so I decided to sell mine. I listed it for a good price on eBay as a buy it now rather than an auction. Somebody bought it after just 2 days, and the very next day, I packaged it up really good and shipped it. I sent it to the address that was given from the eBay account that bought it from me. Now, 3 days after I shipped the PlayStation, and 4 days after it was sold, I got a message on eBay from the buyer. He told me that he recently moved and forgot to put his new address on his eBay account. Then he asked me that I ship it to his new address instead. I responded and told him that I already shipped the PlayStation several days ago and that it was too late. The guy freaked out, saying that I should give him a refund because he wasn't going to get it. I told him that he should have realized that, either before he bought it or within the first day. What was I supposed to do? Sit around waiting for his blessing for me to ship it? I mean, normally, people want things shipped as fast as possible after they buy it. He said that he was going to report me to eBay, but that didn't really scare me because I knew I had done nothing wrong. I told the guy that the package will have his name on it, so he should either go to his old address and pick it up, or contact whoever now lives there and ask them to send it to him. In my mind, that was a very logical solution. Obviously, if it was at the wrong address, there was a chance that somebody would steal it, but I mailed it in a box where it wasn't obvious that it was a PS5. The guy did not seem to think my ideas were good. He just told me that he needed a refund, and he kept threatening me, saying that he would have my eBay account banned. I told him that I wasn't going to refund him. Over the next few days, the guy kept harassing me, sending me messages. He kept saying that I had to give him a refund. He really wanted the money, but I wasn't going to give it to him. I just ignored him. So about a week later, I was looking at some of the messages that he sent me, and I decided to look him up, just for the heck of it. His username seemed to be his actual name. It was a first name, an underscore, and then a last name and a bunch of numbers. The last name was somewhat unique sounding, so I thought that I might be able to find him. I wanted to know what this guy looked like that was harassing me so much. I went onto Facebook and entered his name. Just one result came up, and it was a younger looking man. His page was public, so I could see everything that he posted and stuff, and he was quite active. I scrolled down just a little bit and saw a post that nearly blew my mind. He had posted a picture of a PlayStation 5 with the caption, "Just got this bad boy in the mail. Hit me up if you want to play some COD." The PlayStation looked just like the one that I had sold, and it was dated just 3 days after I had mailed the PlayStation, and the very same day that the guy told me that he had the wrong address. This guy was totally trying to scam me. It was a pretty bad attempt too, to be honest. I screenshotted the post and then sent it to him on eBay. The guy claimed that it wasn't him. Then he backtracked and said that it was his friend's PS5, not his. Then he backtracked again and called me a curse word. After that, I never heard from him again.